Welcome to Conversations Different, a podcast from the Santa Fe New Mexican about issues and people that matter. This month, the New Mexico legislature will return for a 30-day legislative session, in which they will set a spending plan for government and consider a host of other issues, depending on the governor's desires and time allowed. One constant, though, whatever the issue, is the power of a lobbyist. With us to discuss lobbying and lobbyists are Steve Terrell and Dede Feldman. Both know their way around the Capitol. Steve covered the legislature for the New Mexican for years, and Dede is a former state senator. Together, they wrote a report for Common Cause New Mexico focusing on lobbying and alcohol. Dede, how did this report come to be?
This is a report that was written for Common Cause New Mexico. It's one of a series of reports that Common Cause has done over the years called Follow the Dots reports. And the idea is to follow the money, follow the campaign contributions and the expenditures made by special interests and their lobbyists, and then connect that to the success or failure of legislation that is related to that issue.
So, Steve, what led you guys to focus on the alcohol excise tax? Because that's what this report is about, is how for 40 years New Mexico has not increased that tax.
Yeah. That was one of the major things in the last session of the legislature is, in the report we compare it to watching an ice cube melt. They started out at 25 cents a drink, and by the time it got to the governor's desk, it was down to about a penny a drink. And then the governor vetoed that. So it was just like...
And what was the reason? It wasn't strong enough?
I'm not sure what I haven't really read a clear reason from her. One of her spokeswomen, I think, said something to that effect, but...
she said it wouldn't make that much difference.
Yeah.
That it was one of many taxes that she vetoed, tax breaks as well as... this was a tax increase that would have generated revenue, but the others were tax breaks and for alternative energy and so on, and she vetoed them all. And they were all included in one big package deal. So she can line item veto that, but she must have been in a very bad mood about that.
Right. And one of the things that struck me, Steve, when I was reading the report is I knew lobbyists were powerful, but I didn't expect anyone to, stand in the bull ring and say, I own you guys, basically. I mean, did it surprise you as you did your research?
Actually, Dede came across that little factoid, and it was in our old former colleague David Royball's biography or autobiography of Fabian Chavez, and Fabian talked about that.
Taking on Giants. I think that was the name of the book. And
great book, David.
It was a good book, and he talked about taking on the alcohol industry and losing, and that trend kind of still continues today, although the industry has changed quite a bit.
Right. Well, one of the things that struck me, I was doing the history a couple of weeks ago. I sent this to Steve, and there was a district judge who had been elected, and he was supposedly going to postpone when he started because he wanted to be able to lobby the legislature on alcohol issues, and he didn't want to start till after it was done. He quickly retracted and said, no, that's not true. But it would have been true
had
the
paper. Out of context.
That's right. So, Steve, the connections, it's not just that lobbyists have money, it's that you know them.
Right. Yeah. I've worked, and Dede's worked on studies on the oil industry, and that money just blows everything else, including alcohol, out the window. And again, you can't just say, oh, yeah, he got a donation from the liquor industry, so therefore he must be in their pocket, because they all get money, some more than others. Leadership and committee chairmen, of course, get more. But they never seem to have a bad session, like we've said.
The thing is, New Mexico is a small state, and everything is built on relationships. And so the lobbyists are well known to legislators. Sometimes, as Gary Kilpatrick, a former lobbyist, told me, sometimes they are the best man at the legislator's wedding. Sometimes they're related to legislators, the sons or the brothers.
Or spouses.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, it's one big happy family there in some ways, but in other ways, the public who doesn't have these relationships is closed out.
Do you have any suggestions, Dede, from your time, observing and then being part of the legislature? What can a regular person do to counter the power of money and friendship?
Well, having said that money and friendship are very determinative, the New Mexico legislature is still an open legislature to the general public. Less so now because of COVID. But I think one of the things about New Mexico is that you always could go in to your legislator's office and they would usually see you, particularly if you were a constituent. That's not true in other states like Pennsylvania, where I was born. My whole life, I never knew that my legislator lived down the street from me, and I would never have dared to call this person on the phone. And it's different in New Mexico, and I think it is because we're a small state. And even if you live at a great distance, you usually know somebody in another town, and yet there are a lot of things that can be done to curb the power, the inordinate power that lobbyists do have.
Steve, what did you see as a reporter?
For one thing, even though we are an open legislator, sometimes you had problems getting it. They'd have a very controversial issue in a committee meeting that might make it or break it, but the room would be too small. They have these tiny little committee rooms, and there were a couple of hearings I couldn't cover as a reporter because they're so crammed full of people.
Yeah, that's hardly fair.
Yeah.
My favorite is when people drive 6 hours to testify and all of a sudden the hearing has been moved.
Right, the hearing's been moved and all these other bills take precedent. They'll do it for a courtesy for another legislator, but they won't do it as a courtesy for you.
That's right. The people do not always come first. With that, we'll be back in a moment with Conversations Different.
Thanks, Inez. This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. We hope you're enjoying this episode of Conversations Different with Inez Russell Gomez. Great local content is only possible with a talented staff dedicated to bringing you the best local content possible. For that staff to do its work, we need your support by subscribing to the Santa Fe New Mexican. If you're already a subscriber, thank you. And if not, there's never been a better time to subscribe. In addition to our home-delivered newspaper that comes with full digital access, we also provide digital-only subscriptions for SantaFeNewMexican.com. We'll also be releasing more online-only audio and video programming moving forward. The Santa Fe New Mexican has been here for nearly 175 years, and we want to continue being your source for local news and information. Visit us at SantaFeNewMexican.com/subscribe or call us at 505-986-3010. Thank you.
It's a new day in New Mexico, and the doors to boundless opportunity are open as tens of thousands of New Mexicans reach higher to pursue a dream, broaden their horizons, and retrain for a better job. With the New Mexico Lottery and Opportunity Scholarships, you could build yourself a better future anywhere in the state. You put in the hard work, we'll help with the costs. For eligibility details, visit reachhighernm.com.
We are back with Conversations Different. Our guests are Steve Terrell and Dede Feldman. We're talking about lobbying in the New Mexico legislature, specifically in this instance about the alcohol excise tax, which has not been raised in 40 years. Dede, I was thinking about, we talk about when you raise a tax, you get money, and in this case, they were going to dedicate that money to a special fund. But I also think about like the principle of opportunity cost. Because every year they didn't increase the tax a little bit was money we didn't get. it was treatment that wasn't sought. It was
That's right.
Yeah.
And we have so many people that need treatment. I think there was an estimate from the Department of Health that, we have hundreds of thousands of people that need alcohol treatment, behavioral health treatment, substance abuse treatment, and only about 70,000 out of the whole state were able to obtain services. So this tax would have gone into a special dedicated fund that would be to create programs that would help treat those with alcohol dependence. It's got another aspect, too, of the tax, and that is that it's a preventative measure that will prevent people from drinking, particularly if they don't have that much disposable income. And where they've raised the tax in other states like Maryland and
Alaska,
they found that the rate of drinking for problem drinkers has gone down. And then just recently I found out that in Wyoming they lowered the alcohol tax, and there the rate of alcohol dependence went up.
Wow. And we're in a mess right now because during the pandemic, you were home. What else could you do? So you drank a lot. Or at least some people did. I'm not speaking for myself, but
that's very true.
Yeah.
And the rate of alcohol disease went up during COVID. And right now, the statistic is that 6 people die every day in New Mexico because of an alcohol-related illness.
Right.
Yeah, we've got the highest death rate in the nation.
So we lead something.
Yeah, we're number one.
That's right. Oh, man, this is the wrong list, though. We don't want to be first. And as I read your report in the statistics, we're not just first. We're like first with a bullet. It's a bunch.
Yeah, it's a big one. And that's another main reason we did the report in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Because if problem drinkers drink less, and if teenagers maybe postpone drinking because they can't afford it, or there's more of a stigma, whatever, does that potentially save lives, Steve?
Well, I think it does, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not a magic bullet. I don't think really serious drinkers are going to drink. But, hopefully they'll drink less. Mm-hmm. And hopefully this money will, go to help treatment, help get more people into treatment.
Yes, and evidence-based treatment, not just any kind of treatment, but treatment that works. The whole situation is kind of analogous to tobacco, and the arguments against raising the tobacco tax were the same in general as raising the alcohol tax. And it took us years to do that, and the rate of teenage smoking went down immediately.
Luckily, we have vaping now to addict people and make sure they get sick later.
Well, that's what happens. The industry, whatever the special interest is, finds a way around it and develops a new market in China or develops a new mechanism.
Right. Well, one of the things that's so hard right now is the state has bunches of money. So people say, well, why raise a tax when we have so much money? And we have these new industries that are really, providing jobs and are interesting, all the little microbreweries, et cetera, and they're afraid this tax would hurt them. Mm-hmm. So how do you beat those arguments back when you are presenting this?
Well, for one thing, what we've heard is that this bill will probably not apply to the microbrewers.
Okay.
And some of the small Is that correct?
Yes,
distilleries and wineries?
That's going to be in this bill, and it was in the last year's bill and the one that was introduced in 2017 as well. But the industry is pretty united.
Right.
So even though it doesn't apply to those favored small breweries, Bosque Brewery in Albuquerque and others, they stick together. And the small brewers that everybody loves become the face of the Anheuser-Busch and the Premier Distributing, the really big guys. And every legislator has a brewery or a winery in their district. And so they're looking upon them as, these are small businesses, mom and pop operations. And it can be dealt with by an exemption, and it has been. But nonetheless, the overall impression is that you're going to hurt everybody.
Right. Yeah, and some of the smaller breweries actually aspire to become bigger, which is fine. Yeah, but they're definitely against this tax, anything that might come close to doing that.
Steve, when you and I worked together, you always used to give me grief because I was such a, Puritan and scold. And, I'm like the queen of the nanny states. I think that industries that harm should pay taxes. I don't care what you do, but, pay for it. And I
guess that makes me a nanny, too.
I was going to say you have changed a lot.
You've called me worse.
I have. And you've deserved it. But I think about the legislature and the fact that there's alcohol at every function, people drink in their offices. It must be hard to go lobby for a tax when everybody around you is getting blitzed after hours, or at least many.
You mentioned that one legislator back in Dave Royball's book.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a former cabinet secretary last week, and she told me that in the old days of the legislature, like back in the 80s, the lobbyists would go around and ask every legislator, what do you need to drink for tomorrow? In the morning, there'd be a bottle right by their door. It's probably not that blatant these days,
no,
but
right.
I never saw bottles by doors when I was there.
No, they went and put it in the refrigerator or in the wine cabinet.
Yeah, but
I think there is one legislator who did have a wine cabinet.
I believe I read about that.
Mm-hmm.
And, your judgment isn't as good, I think, if you're tipsy or drunk. I mean, that's just,
No
one of the
kidding.
things your mom tells you as a teenager. You don't make your best judgments alcohol impaired.
And, it's also interesting that the watering holes are bars.
The old bull ring.
The bull ring, for example, that's a bar, and that's not a coincidence.
Is there a coffee shop where all the legislators gather to make their backroom deals? They're at the Haagen-Dazs on the plaza or at Starbucks.
That would be nice. I
haven't heard of that.
Yeah,
I haven't heard of either.
Yeah, me either. We need a backroom coffee shop. And on that note, we will take a break and be back soon with Dede Feldman and Steve Terrell.
My name is Maria Jose Rodriguez Cadiz, and I am the Executive Director with Solace Sexual Assault Services. Our mission is to prevent sexual violence and empower survivors of sexual violence through restoring dignity, strength, and resiliency. For almost 51 years, Solace has reduced the impact of sexual violence. We do it by focusing on human rights, social justice, hope, and dignity. We believe survivors are experts in their own experiences and acknowledge that empowering them is crucial to their healing. Our advocacy, forensic interviewing, and therapy services are centered to their needs. Our sexual violence prevention programs in schools and community is just as important. Please check our website at findsolace.org. And if in need, you can call our 24/7 hotline, which is 800-721-7273. Your support is crucial to the lives of survivors. Thank you. Gracias.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to Steve Terrell and Dede Feldman. They wrote a report for Common Cause New Mexico, connecting the dots to show the power of the alcohol industry lobby versus the power of the people and the reality of the legislature. Dede, what kind of dollars are we talking about?
Well, we found that it was overall about $2.6 million that the industry and its lobbyists gave over a 10-year period to elected officials in New Mexico. And the industry also has PACs, and they also give to legislators and governors. The biggest recipient was Michelle Lujan Grisham, and then others from the legislature. And the Attorney General also was a big recipient. It's a considerable amount that is targeted to the people that are in key positions in the legislature to let something through or block something.
Right.
And that was from alcohol companies or organizations. The industry lobbyists donated nearly $1.2 million to legislators and statewide candidates during that 10-year period.
Wow. And we're not talking just about a tax on alcohol. I remember there was an effort to try to do a local option tax because McKinley County is the only county in the state that is able to raise taxes on liquor so it can do things like have a substance abuse center. Other counties would like that power, but that doesn't go very far, does it, Steve?
No, it really doesn't. Gallup's a pretty small town.
Right.
In the scheme of things, till you get Santa Fe and Albuquerque and Las Cruces and other places on board.
Well, one of the things that's kind of horrific about what happened in Gallup is the only reason that was passed is because Jovita died, the little girl that was killed,
Right.
and because the Tribune
because
did
of the Tribune series.
That's right.
That was very instrumental, and the horseback ride and march from Gallup
Journey
to,
for Jovita. Yep.
Yes, that was a historic event.
And one of the main guys behind that was the father of current Senator George Munoz.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, in the interest of full disclosure, David was one of the writers for the Gallup series. For the
David
Tribune.
Gomez?
Yes, David Gomez.
all right.
Yeah,
I've
you know
heard of him.
And he talks about walking on that journey because he did it with the people. And, to this day, I think about how that changed things. But we haven't had movement. And as bad as drunken driving is, that's really not the hugest problem. The huge problem is drinking and then, having your liver fail on you when you're 40
That's
or
right.
getting diabetes or heart, all of those things.
And I like it. I like that journey to Jovita because it was really a case of people taking this into their own hands. The mayor of Gallup at the time was paid a visit by the legislative leadership in, I think it was 1992, saying, we'll see whether we can deal with this administratively or something. No need to make a big deal of this in the upcoming legislative session. And that's when the mayor got with the support of the churches and the support of others.
Mayor Munoz.
Yeah, Mayor Munoz.
Eddie, right?
Eddie Munoz,
Yep,
yes.
right.
Eddie Munoz organized that trip.
And how many? There was hundreds of people on that, weren't there?
Yeah, I forget the exact number.
And
but,
they walked. That wasn't just like
A small contingent
Yeah.
of them walked, and
Right.
people joined and then dropped off. But when they entered Santa Fe, they were 1,000 strong.
Wow.
So that was pretty amazing, and that was in 1992, I think, and that was the year that the Attorney General Tom Udall then had a package to address DWI, and in it was a tax increase, and that was the last time that the New Mexico legislature increased taxes on alcohol.
And the efforts, and Richardson, when he was governor, had some efforts against drunken driving. Those actually have worked. It's not perfect, but we went down on the list. People had to get ignition locks. A lot of penalties went there. But there doesn't seem to be as big of a focus or acknowledgement of the public health cost that alcoholism, has.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Richardson also tried to get this tax increase in.
That's right.
I think it was going to be a dime a drink, if I remember. And the Blue Ribbon Tax Commission, back in Richardson's first year in office, they met one morning and they voted narrowly to do that, to have this tax part of the tax package to be discussed by the legislature. And by golly, after lunch, there was a motion to reconsider, and they reconsidered, and they got rid of the tax. And Richardson was mad,
Yeah.
and he didn't get hardly any of his tax stuff done that session. It was a special session. And I remember a quote from him. He said something like, "If the liquor industry thinks they can stop Bill Richardson on this, they're wrong."
They were right.
They were right.
But they were right. And Richardson never mentioned it again.
Wow. Well, I think one thing about Governor Lujan Grisham is that she may have vetoed it for whatever her reasons were, but she does have a public health background, and probably more than most governors, she understands that raising this tax isn't just about getting more money, it's about spending the money the right way to make people's lives better.
Absolutely.
Let's hope.
I think so. But you do have to be cognizant of the fact that she received a huge amount of money from the liquor industry, and as any governor would. And that's a part of the equation, which is so important, I think, that we keep doing these reports, and that columnists like Steve used to do when he was in the New Mexican, to revealing, making transparent all the money that is spent on campaign contributions and on wining and dining legislators during the session.
Right. And whenever legislators or governors would tell me it doesn't affect what I do, I would say then they must be wasting their money.
Yeah.
And nobody wastes that much money.
Literally, that's true. We looked at some committee votes where people who got the most money were voting against bills that the liquor industry wanted, and 4 bills or, so it's not just...
It's not that cut and dry.
Yeah. It's not just quid pro quo or anything. Right. But you get to know somebody who's always giving you campaign money, even if it's not for your... most of these folks are contract lobbyists, which means they have dozens of employers and clients. And so they may be giving you money for, some bug extermination company or something. Here's your money. But, you remember the face who gives you money.
Yeah, that is true. And on that cheery note, we will end this edition of Conversations Different. We'll be back again with a new podcast on Tuesday. Thank you.